Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Today's video is regarding a couple of podcast interviews that I have come across in recent times. Today, to be exact, I am currently in the beautiful Wales countryside, having driven from the city of Manchester here today. This is about 2 hours from my current residence. And I finished off listening to a recent Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk interview from just a handful of days ago. I listened to half of it a couple of days ago and I finished it off today. That was on a website. Well, what's interesting I want to mention first is that I remember saving it on my YouTube playlist. When I went back to look for it, it seems as though it was taken down on Jordan Peterson's YouTube channel. So God only knows why. I had a little bit of a sense, I had a suspicion that it was a bit of the woke mind virus kicking in, and you have two huge figures, of course, Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk, talking about issues that kind of go against the mainstream progressive liberal narrative. That's obviously going to be seen as dangerous in relation to the zeitgeist and the status quo. That's one podcast that I want to jump straight into, and I'm trying to recollect the news channel where, you know, Ben Shapiro runs it with Daily Wire. It's Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson features, and there is also the fella Matt Smith. I think he did the documentary What is a Woman, and he's also now got a new one coming out. I saw an advertisement for it recently, Am I Racist, which looks rather amusing. The second podcast that I'm literally 10 minutes away from completing, and it should perfectly align with my final leg of the journey to meet some old friends in a Airbnb in the Welsh countryside. We're going to do some walking and activities tomorrow, inshallah. So I'm hoping to get there safe and sound by the grace of God and enjoy tomorrow. Hopefully I can get some footage for the good folk who I appreciate very much, who have come across this video. Always remember, big up your good selves. May the peace, blessings and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon you. If you are Muslim watching this, then assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This second podcast that I want to mention in this video is a interview by James O'Brien, a famous LBC radio presenter, and Gary Stevenson, who has like a YouTube channel, something like the economics guy, the economy guy, something like this. I came across this Gary Stevenson's work only 4 weeks ago. What is economy? Talking about the quantitative easing, talking about the COVID pandemic, talking about inflation, disparity of wealth, inequality. He was educated at LSE, London School of Economics, and one of the Oxbridges, but came from Ilford, East London, Essex border, and comes from a relatively poor background, and was sharing his experience coming into millions, working in the city, being a banker and all that kind of stuff. So I want to just quickly discuss, this is kind of the vibe that I'm on at the moment. Although neither of these are particularly religious, there is a religious sprinkling. And I think, to be honest, when it comes to Anglo-Islamic, the English-speaking Muslim gentleman myself, religion in the Islamic context, but also in Christianity as well, and Jordan Peterson touches upon this, I believe. Or who was it? No, I was listening, in fact, to Hamza Yusuf, his a podcast, an interview he did with sounded like a European gentleman, and he sounded like a Christian European gentleman, and it was something about finding balance, finding peace, finding happiness. Hamza Yusuf was being asked, and they were talking about how only until basically very postmodern times, the last 150 odd years, the whole of the Christian history entailed a forbiddance, a impermissibility around interest and usury, and how it's only really in recent times that has changed. And obviously, the economy is inextricably linked with families and societies, communities and cultures, and many of those, religion is how one lives their life, what they want to sacrifice, what they put forward as the most important things they value as human beings. And so that's another podcast there, but Jordan Peterson does touch upon it. Elon Musk actually very willingly accepts in that first podcast between Peterson and Musk that he is a cultural Christian. Something interestingly that Dawkins, the famous author of many biological books, but also kind of atheist, kind of the atheist renaissance, maybe Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins really leading the way there with the God Delusion. I've actually just bought my grandfather a book by, I'm digressing here, but I'll come back, a book by Rupert Sheldrake, not an old friend of mine, but when you watch people online and you watch so much of their content, you get a sense of their character, their personality, and you know them, but obviously they don't know you. And Rupert Sheldrake I came across through Terence McKenna, who was, again, he's a bit of a psychedelic guru, a bit of a botanist, psychonaut. His brother Dennis McKenna, this takes me way back 10 years plus ago, when London Real I was watching London Real way before it had millions or even hundreds of thousands of subscribers, right in its infancy. And his brother Dennis McKenna, who is also a very wise chap, has a lot to offer. So Terence McKenna, Ralph Abraham and Rupert Sheldrake did these trialogues talking about all manner of topics: chaos, mathematics, psychedelic exploration, and the theory that Rupert Sheldrake innovated, morphic resonance, the ability for species to pass information immaterially. It's far out, but it's got some scientific proof. And I think that's what's fascinating about science, is that often we can be surprised by things such as observing the experiment changes the outcome of the experiment itself. And so I just bought my grandfather, hopefully he doesn't watch this video, I doubt he will, and the surprise will be taken away, The Science Delusion by Rupert Sheldrake. I believe in America it was released as Science Set Free. It's an inquiry, hopefully I'm saying that right, an inquiry into, good Lord, there's a little chick bird just there sitting, just this beautiful scenery. It's such an amazing place to be rambling away, a good place for rambling in relation to walking as well as talking. Science Set Free, Science Delusion, an inquiry into basically the scientific method and the dogmatic approach that many have, the assumption that matter is simply, is there about consciousness and matter and our presumptions. Now, why did I move on to that? Because, Rupert Sheldrake, he also is basically a cultural Christian, and he loves the cathedrals and such. But I guess what I was trying to say is that Richard Dawkins himself in recent times has come out and said he's a cultural Christian. The reason why I've moved on to Rupert Sheldrake there is because Richard Dawkins had the God Delusion, but Rupert Sheldrake had the Science Delusion, and it's kind of a nice complementary book there that I think both are very much worth reading. My point is that both Musk and Dawkins see themselves as cultural Christians, so they might have a problem with the conceptualization of a almighty or powerful divine creator. But I think, to be honest, does that not just exist within all humans? Like, a big part of the Islamic tradition, I believe, is almost a submission in accepting that obviously there's a hierarchy of reality, and something at the top has to be more powerful than us. Human beings are not all powerful. We are not responsible for ourselves. We did not create ourselves. But at the same time, is it reasonable to say that we came from nothing? That also, the nihilistic, hedonist, secular, godless society, we came from nothing, we don't know, and if we don't know, then we're not going to, I think what's obvious to me logically is you have different options and you pick the best option, even if, you have some concerns and queries with it, and you digest it and you work through it as time goes on. So Peterson really was saying that in many ways, Musk, even though a famous atheist and has issues fundamentally with, the Christian or all of the religious doctrine, he thinks what Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ, the Messiah, may Allah's blessings be upon him, came with a message of goodness, of peace, of prosperity that is going to help people live their lives in an orderly fashion. The thing I really wanted to mention, and I don't want to make this video go too long because it will just cut out because my phone memory is low and I need to just wipe everything so I can get back onto the hour-long rambles, is the woke mind virus and the euphemisms used that they both talk about, which they claim to be evil, and I have my suspicions about it, about gender-affirming care, when really you're talking about a mutilation, castration, what was the word, when one can no longer reproduce, a drug that the word is escaping me right now, but a sterilization is the word I'm looking for. And Elon Musk himself, who, by the way, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, what he's doing, SpaceX, Tesla, he's so forward thinking, he's such a unique human. And they were talking about his endorsement of Trump, and I guess what I could say is that whether, I like it or not, I stand on the more Republican side, at least in this current coming up election. I stand on the more conservative side. Historically, that would not be the case, but the issue with the Democrats in America and the liberal progressive movement across the developed Western world is that it's gone too far for many reasonably minded people. And now, God forbid, if Labour in the United Kingdom do not fulfill their promises over the next 5 years, then I believe some Labour politicians have already spoken about it. It literally creates the petri dish for populist and extremist movements to counteract the lies and betrayal of the politicians, not just in this current administration, but for the whole of the 21st century and arguably beyond. So it's a fascinating podcast between Peterson and Musk has literally pledged his allegiance to the destruction of the woke mind virus himself, having said he's lost a son to all of this gender politics. And it's playing God at the end of the day. This whole gender neutrality, we are either male or female. Only God in Arabic, Allah is the only word in Arabic that is neither male or female. And this is really, God is beyond gender. Human beings are very much gendered. And although you have feminine men, feminine males and masculine women, masculine females, this does not remove the reality of the womb and reproduction and our kind of natural Venn diagrams, broadly speaking, drives to provision and compassion as parents, and what's best generally for society to create a prosperous environment for the betterment and development of the species in relation to raising children. And there was a reasonable statement made about how a child is a boat for the future. It's the most optimistic thing you can do, and this is why this channel, it focuses on encouraging people to become Muslim, to at least engage with traditional conservative religious values, even if you're not fully practicing in a sense of being uber pious and super noble. No, but just basic cultural Abrahamic faith can have a huge impact on society and the family. And I'll just end on this as well. Then it goes into the whole economics thing with James O'Brien and Gary Stevenson, talking about how the state of the Western world, the disparity of wealth, the increase in inequality, the unlikelihood that normal people, if your parents owned a home, that doesn't necessarily mean you will own a home, and the kind of the nepotism and the dynasty that is overtaking the meritocracy that Musk also spoke about in that first podcast, a society that should be meritocratic rather than simply based on, they always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And obviously a dose of that is inevitable, probably, likely, but it's going far, and I it's reasonable to have fear for the future. But that does not mean that we should be pessimistic to the point where we don't get married and have children, subhanallah. So I know my memory's running low anyway. Easy to remember, Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk on the Daily Wire, James O'Brien and Gary Stevenson, LBC, I think, or maybe James O'Brien's personal channel on YouTube. You learn a lot from understanding that we don't need, this is what Gary Stevenson says, work harder to get more. This is not necessarily the world. Why would I work so much harder to not get any more? In many ways, the position that we have been given is from God. And to find peace in that, if you're a baker, you're a baker. If you're a builder, you're a builder. If you're a banker, you're a banker. If you're a king, you're a king. We so much want to, ascend the social hierarchy. And there's nothing wrong with maybe that desire, that kind of social mobility. That's fine. I'm just talking about having peace and contentment in yourself, knowing that you can be very happy with very little. I'll end on this. I mentioned it in the video I spoke about, English Muslim rambling about being British, the Liverpudlian gentleman who was born during the Second World War, who said, when I was being raised in the northwest of England 70 years ago, we had so little, and now we're in a position of never having so much, but never at the same time having so little with inside ourselves, strength and robustness, and being basically spoilt children, but at the same time having very legitimate concerns around mental health because of the lowering in the quality of life due to the cost of living crisis, and it only looks like it's going to be getting worse from here. So do turn to God and find spiritual sanctity, sanctuary in the sanctity of the divine. Meditation and prayer, reading the holy books, living by the laws and commandments of God, which are there for our own benefit, and not being plugged into the mainstream propaganda narrative that wants to divide us all of us peasants. Basically, if you're a normal person, if you don't have tens or hundreds of millions of pounds, then we're all in the same boat, whether we're Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, non-believing. We need to work together as a community to move forward. So any benefit from this video comes from God. All mistakes and errors are obviously my own. I appreciate anybody who's listened this far. Always remember, big up your good selves. And until next time, good folk, Al Vida Sane.